Hi again, it's Michael Dobbs, and we're here today with another installment of Business Effects. And today, again, we have Rob Hogenvorst with us. Last week, we were talking about intelligent automation, and Rob brought up another idea, which I thought was very interesting. So we wanted to talk about that today, which is execution excellence in retail, leveraging the X-ray approach. And so, without further ado, Rob, take it away.
Hey, thanks, Michael. Great to be back again. Yeah, the X-ray approach is something I think every organization should be using. But when we look at the impact on retail, going back to a concept we talked about last week, let's look at one of the number one issues that we're dealing with, and that is labor force changes, right? So we have individuals that are moving around, even within the retail space, whether you're in a call center, whether you're in operations, whether you're a store associate, or even online. We have two big impacts where I think this approach comes in handy. One is when somebody leaves an organization and comes to another organization or their new job, they're usually hired for a reason or a specialty, and they're going to want to improve the process area that they're working with. And usually that improvement is based on something they've done in the past, and they're just bringing that model. That's one element. The other element we look at, especially in retail, is the consumer has changed how they purchase, right? So we went through, hey, we were trained and we've always gone to a retail store. Then we started moving into e-commerce. We'd have a mix of both of them. Then we were forced through a pandemic, all e-commerce. So now it's opening up again, and we're now able to go back to the store. Through that, these retail stores and organizations have looked at different ways or had to go and buy different technologies to get digital, right? Or improve digital outcomes. But now they have all these tools for the digital world, but they still have all the tools from the way they were doing pre-pandemic. So how do I really figure all that out? You can go through rationalization processes. You can look at different steps that we've gone through with our old technology, and let's go through a traditional. Now let's go, is it still the same process? What are my pain points? What are my challenges? That model. But what if you could now take it so that when somebody comes in, you've already gone through that end-to-end process? Because in the retail world, there's one other element that I'm going to add as I'm thinking on the top of my head here. We talked about labor. We've talked about coming out of post-pandemic. The other big one is around that why somebody is buying from our brand. And it really changes too from segments, but it's all about from the purpose. Like I'm looking for a purpose, meaning does that brand have similar desires that I do? And the biggest, or maybe not as desires, but more of my thoughts in life. And the big one that you're going to think about or that comes to mind is sustainability. You bring sustainability in, you bring in post-COVID, then you add labor changes. Those are three really big impacts that when you bring all those new individuals together, they're looking at certain processes. Now you have multiple tools. Now you're going to bring in sustainability metrics. How do you truly understand what is happening without going through a very long and laborious process to figure that out? That's where leveraging an X-ray really makes this quicker and faster to get to, because it's all about, hey, we need to get to outcomes. We're in retail, like everything else. It's a margin-driven world. We want better experiences, but if I can truly go and look at, maybe it's through my order management system. Maybe it's looking at, hey, how are we, if we're looking at it from an efficiency point of view, maybe we've had different distribution arms. Do we need to change how we're doing, where we're storing products from a distribution point of view, just because we want to look at the impact of how many trucks we have on the road? What's that doing around our environment? How does that hit sustainability metrics? So a really good way to be able to do that is to chase the data, not just the data in all of our systems because we're collecting it, but it's also what are the tasks people may be doing as they're dealing with this data, or what other systems within a process that we may not have captured or have insights to as new individuals are taking over the roles, or even individuals that are part of that process itself. Are we really looking at it as end to end? Or am I looking at it as a segment that I'm responsible for? So the X-ray comes in and just takes care of all of that. And we manage it from the data input all the way through. We bring in the tasks of the individuals involved or the teams. We're capturing that. And if you think, and some of these organizations are larger, that's a lot of data. So then taking that to come through and really be able to look at it and understand where my capacity and where my constraints are. And it's not just being able to model a process and then say, hey, now let's take that process and I'm going to throw a bot at it, right? Let's go put it through an RPA process. Because if you don't think of that end to end and the impacts on the front end and the back end for the rest of the processes involved or correlation, you could be moving data really quickly through one. So it's like, hey, I've got water coming through a very large pipe and all of a sudden I just hit a garden hose. and you're going to have a backup and that pressure is going to change, but then it means somebody else on the other end or there's some kind of impact. So where this really helps you to go at is actually model, but you're modeling, what if I make a change by your capacity and your constraints? So say, hey, we don't have enough resource in one area. So if we're looking at, let's look at the sustainability issue and distribution areas. So if we look at where certain products are coming from, do we have enough resources for getting those out the door? Can we do it with smaller trucks? Can we do it with less trucks, less impact, depending if it's a delivery model or is it going to a retail store? So there's different ways we can look at to say, hey, what are those outcomes? So is it an improvement in the process? If we do that, does it improve our environmental metrics? Also, does it reduce costs? So whether it's an operational, whether it's an outdated system, is it a lack or taking somebody out of a role that they don't need to be in anymore? But that's where I think this is a real significant piece for retail as we're looking at now retiring some of the systems dealing with the pandemic that were older and bringing some of these new digital and in the IBM format. I look at that as, hey, this is the hybrid cloud. But what is the right place for all these? You're still probably going to want to have some systems on-prem, right? You're still going to have your POS systems as an example, but then you're going to look at that information and how is that being shared back and forth, back over to whether it's your customer appreciation program. So if I walk into one store, I'm shopping, I change locations, I'm doing something else, I forget something, but there's a store at a different location. Will they know when I walk in, I just had an interaction with you? Right? They may not, but that's all part of the areas to say, hey, if that's where I want to get to in providing that very rich customer experience, I need some way to change how we've done things today. And that can take a lot of time if it's just a traditional, let's get up on the whiteboard, let's start looking at challenges, how we're going to do that versus let's do a quick model or an x-ray of what these processes look today. Let's understand and say, if I change these data elements, how does it impact? And then from there, we not only do we understand the impact on the process and the organization, but we also understand the financial impacts.
Thanks, Rob. That's really interesting. So I guess it sounds like what we're doing with the X-ray is we're taking a look at processes within a retail environment, understanding what works within that process, understanding what doesn't work within that process, and then from there, using the X-ray in order to help us find what the best solutions could be in order to make the processes run more efficiently. So if that sounds interesting to you, if you'd like to hear more about that, please reach out to Rob or to myself. We'd be very happy to talk to you. Thank you.